Hey, this is Sky. Welcome to my YouTube channel. It's bright and early, mind, body, and soul, daily discipline. This is how we get through. Let's get into today's topic. I want to talk about utopia. It's something I've just been thinking about for a little bit. The idea of utopia and the utopian person. You know, the person who dreams of utopia, who wants to live in a utopia. Do you fantasize about a utopia for society or maybe even for your life? I think utopia, in my personal opinion, can be an unhealthy fantasy, but it somehow seems necessary. I'm not sure why it's necessary, but if you look back through history, back to the days of Plato and Socrates, go far back, people have been fantasizing about utopian societies, the perfect place to live, the perfect planet, since the beginning of time. And why? I would assume we're the only creatures that do this. It's one thing to create your own little individual utopia. And I think in some ways that's what we call the American dream, right? Not that we're all guaranteed or forced to start off this game in suffering. We all start off at different places economically on the ladder, in different classes. Whatever class you're born into doesn't matter, but we all have an opportunity to make ourselves a good life. And you can have that white picket fence ideal, right? This kind of Norman Rockwell fantasy. And that those Norman Rockwell paintings kind of depicted a type of America that never really existed anywhere. It was just a fantasy. But a lot of people have been desperate to recreate that fantasy, myself included. I mean, I feel like I've created a little utopia for myself. I started off in the ghetto, lived in bad neighborhoods that were gang infested and with crime and murder for decades. Finally had a little bit of a come up financially, educationally, upgraded my status. Now I have a nice house with a pool, nice decent sized piece of property, live in an area that's safe, and I've created this little world for myself. This little perfect little world. I love my life. I have an incredible life. I'm not trying to brag about that, but I do sit around often just kind of giggling, wondering, how the fuck did I get here? So I have my own little utopia. But it's not true utopia, because what is utopia? Utopia is this idea of safety, of abundance, of equality. Utopia is interesting because to me it feels like it is a fantasy driven by the postmodernist, by people who seem to want socialism. Every time utopian fantasies arise, whether it be in novels, in movies, or in political conversations, we're always talking about a form of distribution of wealth, of equality. We want a world where everyone has clean water, everyone. We want a world where every single human, every person has food. We want a utopian society where there is no sickness or disease and every single person has access to health care and can live forever. We want a utopian society where every single person is equal. There's no hierarchies. You're not better than me, and I don't have to work for you. In a utopian society, there are no trash men. There are no waiters. There are no strawberry pickers, field workers. There are no bottom rung of the labor class. There are no poor people in utopia. There's no ghetto in utopia. There's no meritocracy in utopia. This is socialism. There's no merit. Your individual work isn't celebrated above the next lazy motherfucker who's doing nothing. Because we're all equal. In fact, in a utopia, you don't really have to do anything. In a utopia, it appears that individuality has been zapped, sucked out, siphoned, drained. In utopian societies, when I read books and I look at movies, everybody is dressed in weird outfits, in like they're all the same. Like as if we've gotten rid of culture, tradition, fashion, personal interest, and we've all homogenized into one race, one group, one culture, one nation. The whole world will just be one corporation, one nation, one thought, one religion, right? This is the idea of utopia. It goes into this weird area. Now, I may have painted some of that to be extreme, but sit and fantasize about utopia. Create your own utopian society. Think about it from the beginning to the end. And where is that end? The end is socialism, I think. That's what I seem to see. The utopian person is not someone I want to be. Dependent upon technology for everything. For everything. They can't even go camping. They can't even get back to nature. The utopian would go camping with their technology and create a little house for themselves. Little magical technology that we're coming up with every week to make our lives easier. And you guys are addicted to it. The utopians are addicted to it. You ever see someone that just loves technology? Maybe you do. You love your cell phone. You love your computer. You love that little screen in your fucking car and all the fucking accessories that it does, and you just can't get enough of buttons and electronics, and you want everything to have buttons and to be electronic. Maybe my sofa can somehow have some fucking buttons on it. Maybe my shoes can have some fucking buttons on it. Somehow have a screen, mount an 8-inch screen on my fucking Chuck Taylors. Let's make everything technological. This is the utopian. Why? Why are people addicted to technology? Why is it so fascinating? Why would you rather sit and play video games than go outside? Because you're a utopian. And you're fascinated with this new world that we're creating around us. Why is this push towards electrical cars so righteous? Go talk to one of these electrical car nuts. They're psychopaths. You might be one of them. You're brainwashed. And you can't tell them nothing about the fucking battery technology. You can't show them videos about these electrical cars exploding like fucking supernovas. You can't tell them that this is really not a path towards climate change, because they're drunk on this utopian fantasy. And they're going to force every single person in the world to join their idea of utopia. This is what utopians do. They force others. Utopians can't just say, well, I want a good life for me and my family, and I don't know about you, maybe you want to suffer, but we want to have the easiest, best life possible. So we're going to have all the technology, we're going to have all the inclusivity. Inclusivity is going to be our religion. Equity is going to be our religion. In the utopian society, social justice is your religion. I don't see it as a viable future. Let me tell you why. Because utopian fantasies, utopias, let me put it this way, utopias always turn into dystopias. We can track this. America started off as a utopia. Colonialism. European colonialism had two folds to it, two aspects to it. One obviously was making money. The Virginia Company set up in America as an outpost to make tobacco and to, have cotton and to sell that throughout the entire world. So there's money, it's corporations, it's like Walmart. But colonialism wasn't just money, it was about utopia. creating a new world. The new world was an expansion beyond the borders of England, because England, London in particular, but England itself, the UK, was a shithole. Oh my God, it was disgusting. It was a disgusting shithole full of disease and criminals and filth. It was awful. So they were desperate to create this fantasy land. And that's what part of the expansion was about. After the revolution, we were punch drunk on expansion, and we expanded this country as far as we could. Always with this dream of not just having more space because we have so many people, but with this utopian ideal. You're not getting it. Maybe we'll put it into more current context. Suburbs. America used to be cities and rural areas. The cities were outposts in the rural areas. You go outside of New York City, we're talking in the 40s, 30s, 1920s, you go outside of New York City and not far. You go outside of LA back in those days. You don't have to drive far. 5 minutes. And you're in the middle of fucking fields. We created suburbs in the 50s. You remember white flight? 40s and 50s, after World War II, suburbs were created. It was a utopian fantasy. The suburb was a utopian dream to escape the filth and inner city crime and all the shit, all the crowded crap that goes along with that kind of lifestyle. Advertisements, you can go and watch them. Move out to the suburbs and get yourself one of these little cookie cutter houses, and they all look the same. And everybody gets a car and a house. And everybody's the same. That's utopia. The same. Sameness. Socialism. Everybody's going to have a strip mall within 3 miles of their house. You know, a grocery store and a library. And the suburbs are very predictable looking everywhere in America. They're exactly the same. The suburbs, the utopian fantasy of the suburb thrived for a long time until it didn't. Until gentrification came into play and people wanted to re-urbanize, and these cities, instead of being violent hellholes, became posh playgrounds for millionaires. And then all the poor people move out to the suburbs. This is what happened to DC. An exact thing. DC used to be a shithole. The suburbs were great. Now the suburbs are shitholes. You go out to PG County and outside of DC, it's hell. Hell. Wasn't always that way. When I was a kid, you'd go out to PG County, it was fine, it was great. Working class, utopian fantasy. All utopias turn into dystopias. Today is a utopia from yesterday. We're yesterday's utopia right now. This is yesterday's utopia. This is utopia. The fantasy of utopia from 100 years ago is right now. And motherfuckers aren't happy. This is the worst fucking time to be alive, right? We think that we're at the end of times. We always think we're at the end of times. This is the end of days. Revolution, World War III, famine, disease. It's all here. All the biblical shit is here. We're living in this Mad Max fucking hellhole with $7 a gallon gas, and this is your utopia that you guys created. There is no such thing as a utopia, and I think it's a fantasy for weaklings. I'll end the video here because I feel like this rant is going a little bit long, but I don't think that we should chase utopia. I think that we should embrace suffering. I know that sounds like torture for some. The weaklings have just recoiled. What do you mean? Embrace suffering, you weak bitch. You become stronger through suffering. You want to live in a fucking utopia. What you want is weakness. That's your weak little inner bitch crying out that I can't handle life. Stop being so weak and stop fantasizing about utopia. Train. Become strong enough to handle a fucking hard life. It's all food for thought.